Good morning, everyone. This is Rob Thompson, licensed agent with the agency and a realtor and member of an admin of the Colorado Springs Rental Group. And I just wanted to briefly touch on the topic of rent to own while I had some time before an inspection at noon. So without further ado, I'll break right into it. Rent to own isn't a very popular topic or a popular option here in Colorado Springs because we have such a strong sales market. Typically, sellers don't have to do rent to own. That said, there are some options out there, and you'll see some advertisements for some. Be very, very careful. Always consult an attorney, and a realtor actually cannot draft a rent-to-own contract. We're just not empowered to do so. We can only execute traditional contracts to buy and sell real estate that are commission approved. So just be real careful. That's how complex these transactions can be. In that we're not even allowed to do them. To do the purchase for the rent to own, the purchase contracts. Okay, so that said, excuse me, rent to own, in my humble opinion, is an umbrella topic, an umbrella that covers a couple of different types of transactions. Again, it's not legal advice. Always consult an attorney. But there's some questions you need to ask. You need to ask, is the rent to own, is it a lease option to purchase? That is, are you executing a lease? Are you a tenant? And what that means is you could do a lease option to purchase or a purchase option where you are a tenant for a year, and then at the end of the year you might have built up some equity to apply to the purchase. In this case, for example, one example of this might be you are a tenant for a year with an option to purchase at the end. And there may or may not be credit that you've built up. One advantage of this is you can lock in a purchase price now. The disadvantage is that you might not be able to build in any equity, or if you are building equity during that period of time, if you don't execute the purchase option, you might lose that equity. So these are the details that you need to check when you are considering this option. There's also an equity building where maybe you are purchasing the actual home and you have all the rights of a traditional mortgage. And you're building equity each month in the home. If it's a rent to own, you need to ask, does the contract specify that it's equity building for a period of 12 or 24 months, at which point you have to refinance into a traditional mortgage? If you can't do that, what happens? Does the contract say you lose all that equity and the home goes back to the original seller? Maybe you're not truly building equity. Maybe you're just, the seller says, I'm going to set aside $500 a month for a year. At the end of the year, you have $6,000 to apply to the purchase. Same thing might happen. First, is that money yours at the end if you don't execute the sales contract, or whether for whatever reason? Bottom line is, make sure you pay attention to the fine print on these, because they are complex, and they typically favor the seller in terms of that equity going to the seller if you don't purchase the option, if you don't execute the option to purchase the house. I also want to talk briefly about something called subject to mortgages. You may get calls, or you may see this philosophy of you can buy a home subject to the existing mortgage. That's one way that some investors purchase properties. There's a big potential problem in that the mortgage company could actually call the loan due if you sold your home under this banner. So just be real careful if you hear the word subject to. It's a legitimate way to buy or acquire properties, but there's a major caveat. If I offered my home for sale subject to the existing mortgage, U.S. Bank owns my loan. U.S. Bank could, if they're notified of a new person paying the mortgage, they could call the existing mortgage due in full at that point in time. That would create lots of drama. Again, so rent to own is a big umbrella. It covers a whole bunch of different methodologies of purchasing a home. Just be real careful, pay attention to the fine print, and the big question is, in my head is what do you need to do to execute the sale and at the end? That is, after a year, do you have to get a traditional mortgage? I've seen a couple people lose equity in these situations where they weren't able to execute the mortgage, and then in one case was actually evicted because they were at the end of the tenancy period. So just be super careful. I'm Rob. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. This is not legal advice. Thank you. Have a good night. per day. It's daytime. Bye.